Allow me to reintroduce myself.
You are now tuning in to the Snap Call Podcast.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Snap Call. I'm Xavier.
I'm Ice.
Hector.
And today we're doing something a little bit different as we all prepare for the World Series of Poker. We thought it would be cool to do two things, twofold, I guess you can say. We all kind of dug into the books and we're prepping ourselves for the World Series of Poker. And then we're also taking on what is kind of a training series of sorts where we're going to be, jumping on different poker training platforms and, diving in, seeing what we like, what we don't like, what's been helpful, what's been not. So the very first training platform that we jumped into was Solve for Why with Matt Berkey and his team. Solve for Why recently released their entire catalog essentially for free. Now, Solve for Why has been one of the leaders when it comes to training for tournaments and cash games. And, we figured this would be a really, really good one to get into. So we each did a module. Hector did an MTT blueprint. Ice did a WSOP prep, and then I did a range reading slash GTO slash solver type of fun stuff. And we're all going to take a couple minutes, chat a little bit about what the module covered, what we liked, what we didn't like, and then give a rating. So without further ado, Hector, if you want to go ahead and jump into the MTT blueprint and tell us what it was all about.
Yeah, so with the WSOP, with any big tournament prep, I usually like to go to the basics. I don't want to get too fancy with certain ideas in my head or focusing on like a specific spot and like that's all I'm gonna do, and who knows if that spot even comes up in the tournament. But just playing ABC poker and to know that I'm gonna trust my gut when to deviate, but knowing that I have a good, blueprint. So when I saw this one, I was like, this is perfect. So it's 6 modules. Each one is about 30 to 40 minutes. The last one kind of wraps it up pretty well, and it's only like 25 minutes. So essentially, I don't want to give everything away because, it is their, stuff. So go watch it. But, it's a good way. There's some pros and cons to it, right? So you have the 3 phases of a tournament where they're talking about before the bubble, on the bubble, ICM implications, and then they're going through regular hand reading charts of like what you should do in your spot, and then they also go into different categories of ranges based on big blinds. So that's a good thing to know. Now, when they go into what the strategies are, I don't want to give those away. Go watch it. But I would say that it's a good idea to have those strategies in mind when you're going to go play, right? So you know that what's your danger zone, like or like when are you push folding, when is the time to reshove, how many big blinds until you start c betting, or that you can c bet, when can you start double barreling and triple barreling, when can you start 3 betting. So I think knowing those ranges, or for you as a player, your specific way, not whatever the charts tell you or GTO tells you. I mean, if that's how you play, then sure, that's a great way to start, and then you can trust yourself into when you're going to go. So those were probably my biggest pros for it. That it was like, okay, like no matter where I am in the tournament, I have a strategy, a simple strategy that I can go to and like, hey, all right, I'm under, 40 bigs, so I can double barrel here, or no, I got to tighten up, or I got to do this, and so those are the things that I really like. Con is, we know it, we've said it, Berkey can get a little long-winded, you got to bring out the thesaurus a little bit sometimes. It's not something that you can just watch or have in the background while you're doing something else. Like, you got to pay attention. So I don't know if some people watch videos like that. I'm usually a multitasker, and this was definitely something I had to rewind, like, what do you say? And really just shut everything off and pay attention, so
Okay.
That would probably be my only con. But overall, pretty good. Like I said, take it as a good blueprint, exactly what it is, a blueprint, not a play-by-play of how you should play a tournament, but a blueprint, and then add in your own, your own flavor.
Awesome. And you said Berkey, so Berkey did that training.
Yeah, Berkey's the one that did it. It is
Awesome.
a little dated. I think like 2021 or 2023 or something like that is when he did it. So, but I think it still holds true. Like it's a good foundation for, someone who's just like, hey, this is how you should approach tournaments.
Okay. Cool. 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 If you had to give it a rating, based on the time you invested versus the value you received, what would you rate it out of?
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. There are some, sometimes I just get lost a little bit in the vernacular of what he's talking about. I'm like, you could say it in 3 words, but you chose to use 20. That sort of thing. But like I said, if you look at it as a macro, like what they're trying to get across, I think it came across really well. And yeah, and I think it's a good foundation for people. Um, so yeah, if you're going in and you don't know like what a 3 bet is, what a C bet is, push for like you don't know the vernacular, like this, you're gonna struggle with this.
Yeah.
Like it's meant for a new player, but at the same time, like you got to know the verbiage, just because that's just the way he talks.
Yeah.
Do they give like a breakdown of like hands to fold or hands to play in different positions?
So he puts up the Nash charts, and they used at the time it was new. It was called a pre-flop. I happened to have it on my phone, so I was like, oh, I look it up, and it was just like, hey, they kind of broke each big blind into positions. So it was early position was always under the gun, middle position was like low jack, and then late position was always button. And then they would show the 3 charts for that one, for that big blind, and then just talk about the reasoning as to why you would want to do this and that. And they would also go into like blinds play. So like what to do when the big blind's going after you and you're the big blind, or what small blind did, and vice versa, like how to attack the big blind, or the ranges you should use there.
Okay. Hey,
But of course he does caveat it, but he doesn't emphasize it. Like I feel like he just kind of says it, just like, yeah, well, you got to know how your person's playing. If they're playing really tight, then you should fold and you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, okay, like I know that because you or the person who's been playing a while knows that, but I don't know if a new person would pick that up.
I gotcha. Okay. Cool. 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 Love it. Definitely got to check it out. Mine did not really jump into tournament specifically.
Hmm.
And in scenarios that I wish I was covering, such as those. So I'm definitely gonna have to check that one out. Ice did the WSOP prep homeschool. Tell us a little bit about the training you did, Ice.
Yeah, so I did the WSOP prep homeschool. It was pretty much a guide to live catch game players doing that transition to tournament play. So they had a lot of charts as far as just like when you play cash, right? You're a winning player, you win a certain percentage of the time. So now you take that, and obviously at tournaments you don't cash nearly as much as you do playing cash games. So it's just like you basically giving you the realization that most of the time you're going to lose. So in order to be profitable when you're in the ICM, you want to run deep, and that's how you get your profit. And then it was good, but it was just more towards like somebody that never played like tournaments and just this is their first time playing tournaments, because they started breaking down tournament structures and stuff like that, or raking the tournament. Um, which some of the cons for me was, say for example, they were saying you don't want to play any tournaments that have more than 15% rake, right? But it's just like then they would mention like $200 tournaments, $100 tournaments, $300 tournaments. That doesn't apply to the WSOP. The rake is the same for the WSOP, so it's just like why even bring that up in a WSOP prep? Um, the good things is like what I one good thing I took from it was that he was saying like when you get later in the tournaments, when you're in ICM, one chip loss is greater than one chip gain. pretty much like
Mm.
you have to be careful losing a hand because that can affect you way more than you just win a hand. Pretty much, you could lose a small pot, but that can affect you more than winning a small pot. So basically, tighten up, don't make hero calls. Even if you got a right read, just lay it down. Kind of like tying up your play. And then the rest is just pretty much how to basically navigate. Like if you want to be profitable, you got to navigate. You got to make a deep run. Everything's about if you're profitable, you got to make a deep run. And you can cash the majority of the time, but you're not going to be profitable in tournaments if you don't make that deep run. And basically how to tighten up your game after you're in ICM.
Okay. Did you think there was anything that you learned or didn't know specifically? Like, were you like, oh, like I didn't know this before, or was it all kind of, you know, things you've done because you've played good amount of tournaments, you played in the WSOP? Was there anything that you were like, oh, I didn't know this?
Yeah, so a lot of it was super duper basic, like just basically like transitioning to tournaments, like pretty much like like we play tournaments, so we know it's a lot harder to cash a tournament than than what it really is. So it's just like that was something that they kept saying, like, hey, if you're a winning cash game player, right, and you win 60% of the time in tournaments, that's equivalent to like 18%. So it's just like
Mhm.
it's a big drop. And then also a lot of it's just stuff that's like the basic. Like the one thing he said was if we play live cash games and then we go into live tournaments, we're gonna be outskilled by online tournament players because the volume of tournaments they play are a lot. So we could play one tournament a day, right? For a whole year, and that's 365 tournaments. Online players will play multiple tournaments a day, so they will have like a 10-to-1 advantage. So most of the time you'll be outskilled in a tournament. Which sometimes I agree and disagree with that. Like obviously, the more volume you get, the player's gonna be better. But at the same time, online it's a lot different than live as well too. There's more reads in live, and then sometimes you know how it is online. Sometimes it's just like you
Yeah.
just
And then online when
you
you're
just
multi-tabling, right? Like you're not fully invested or paying attention to half the tables you're playing, so that makes sense. Well, if you had to
and
give
then
it a grade, what would you give it?
uh, a three just because it's a lot of basic stuff, but like just common sense stuff. Like you look at the structure of the tournaments. Like obviously for us, we want to play the certain tournaments, but we only have a week of tournaments to choose from. So it's just like whether we like it or not, those are the structures we're gonna play, for that week.
Yeah.
And then also as far as like online, he was the volume of it because a lot of people play $20 tournaments, $40 tournaments, $50 tournaments online. It's not 1,000, 500, $600 tournaments. It's low budget tournaments. So it's just like you can have the most experience playing those stakes, but that doesn't equivalent to $1,000, $1,500 WSOP bracelet event.
Yeah.
So that was the thing, like, because you get Hector, you get into these $5, $10 tournaments, $20 tournaments online, and it's 1,000 people, and it's a different player than what you're playing live on WSOP.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
not
When you're
necessarily the most
multi-tabling,
skilled
you're
win.
not.
Yeah, not necessarily the most skilled win. It's whoever holds up, whoever gets lucky.
Yeah, I would say like tournaments just in general online, like you're doing volume, you got a lot of tournaments in there, but you don't really start paying attention until you're deep or you're
Mhm.
like close to the bubble or in the month, or last 4 or 5 tables. They're like, all right, let me start paying attention to these players and how they play. Everything's kind of just the spot. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
20 big blinds under the gun, fold,
Yeah, my
move on.
my my WSOP prep that module I did was in no spots, no nothing. It was basically telling you like, hey, this is the transition. This is what you have to look forward to. This is what
Yeah,
you need to focus on. Like, if you want to make money, you have to run deep. Just like simple
yeah,
stuff.
So okay.
So
yeah,
So it's definitely geared for someone that's like going to the WSOP without some real tournament experience prior, right? Like cash and
correct.
WSOP. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. All right. And to wrap it up, I did the range reading course Solve for Why. It's taught by Andrew Brokis. And honestly, it still holds pretty relevant to today. I think it came out in 2024, so not a whole lot has changed. The purpose of the range reading course is about making good decisions despite the uncertainty or unknown that lingers hand to hand. So it's not like, hey, you're going to be able to put someone on a very specific type of hand. It's more like, hey, based on the information I have, what hands are my opponents more or less likely to hold? And there's a big focus on determining our opponent's range more so on their actions. They went into something called like specific, it's incentives, but specifically in the poker world, and I won't dive too much into that to give anything away. But I did like that. They broke down what is a pretty complex concept. They kind of dumbed it down, and I appreciated that because at first I was kind of like, oh, this is gonna be difficult. But they essentially said like, you can break hands down into three categories: monsters, marginal hands, and no show hands. And basically, monsters are an incentive hand where they want to grow the pot because they know they're gonna be favored at a showdown. Marginal is they want to have pot control when to get, and then they want to get to a showdown. And then no show is a hand that's not gonna be favored at showdown. Um, and their incentive is to bluff to actually win the hand. So you want to put your opponent's hand on one of those three. I'll say there was an advanced range reading session as part of like the 4 or 5 parts. That went over my head. It was truly advanced. If you use like solver based software before, it probably wouldn't be too difficult, and you have experience reading charts. But this even the beginning of it, definitely not recommended for someone that's just getting into poker. Lots of concepts and theories that are kind of like, okay, we've played, so we understand it, even if it's at a high level, but definitely not for a newbie. Um, but yeah, overall, I definitely enjoyed just them making it as simple as possible. Um, they said 99.9% of the players you're playing aren't familiar with these concepts, right?
Yeah.
And range reading and whatnot. So you're wanting to exploit the information you're getting, but most of the time the everyday guy that you're playing alongside of, he's not going to have these concepts, so you also have to play to your to your opponent as well, which I liked. He gave some scenarios as to like, well, I understand you're not going to always play a pro and you're not going to play someone that's playing perfect poker, but here are ways you can still categorize them and figure out, okay, are they having condensing actions or are they having polarizing actions? So yeah, overall I thought it was a good course, but not recommended for someone that's learning or new to poker whatsoever.
Okay. What rating would you give it?
I would say I'd say a 3 out of 5. I feel like, and maybe it was because they put the advance, like I went right into the advance without even realizing I was going into the advance, and then I was like, hold on, am I doing a whole different training? Like, I was like, this
Mhm.
is completely different, but no, it was the same topic. So, I felt like they could have focused a little bit more, on like kind of speaking about ranges in general, versus kind of going directly into the advanced right after. And maybe that's more my fault more than anything. Um, but I thought they still did a good job of balancing some easy to learn concepts for someone that's still seasoned versus some really high level stuff that, a pro would fully understand, which
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we played a lot of poker, but we are not playing poker 365,
Yeah. Do you think we would like it?
I think you guys would. I think the whole understanding the incentives of the way people play certain hands is beneficial. Like I will definitely be using that here in the future in terms of like, all right, where are we here? Right now, we do that already in different ways. But the biggest thing I took away was they talked about, okay, hey, one thing that poker players like to do is learn a new concept and then try to use that right away to outsmart someone. So he's like, bluff catching and hero calling is the most overrated things you can do in poker. He's like, because most of the time, you're wrong. He's like, you're gonna be wrong more than you are right. So just use the information you're given, right? Like it's right there for you, and a lot of times these people don't even realize they're giving it to you for free. So it's definitely about exploiting people's actions and categorizing their actions as well as where their hands could fall in. So
Yeah. Okay.
cool. So yeah, that is our recap of the 3 modules we did for the Solve for Why. We're definitely gonna take a lot of these, um, lessons that we took and put it into action when we go into the WSOP. Not too sure what the next module we're gonna do is, but it will most likely take place after the WSOP. who knows? Maybe we'll do so well that we'll start taking some more high level stuff, or we'll do so terrible that I got to do an intro to poker tournaments. So I
Yeah.
think how Vegas goes will really determine maybe what the next platform is, and if you guys know of any platforms. Whether it's Faraj Jaka or anything else, Jaka coaching, or other platforms you would recommend, definitely let us know, and we'll add it to our list.
Yeah, and there's ton like we said at the beginning, Sulfur Y is free right now, and they have tons of modules there. Um, what I know is really good, and we didn't mention here is probably my favorite one is the Poker Out Loud that they do.
Yes,
You
yes,
know, so
yes.
they're just there playing live tournament play. And some of it's cash, I think, and they all have headphones and they all turn on the music when it's not their turn, and when it is, they're just going through their thought process. And I think that's really beneficial and probably one of the most entertaining ones that they have.
Yeah,
So
yeah, there's
don't be discouraged just by those three that we've done. Software Y has a lot of good content.
absolutely. And with that said, we'll catch you on the next breakdown of some poker training platforms. And until next time.
Go Knicks.
Hey, I'm about to go level up. I cannot settle for nothing. I never been regular.